afternoon, everyone. Once you get up and like move around so we get generous peace. Island girls and island queens do not enjoy me. So I want to thank the leadership team and the volunteers of Book Sandwich Inn for this opportunity, for inviting me. Thank you so much. I was just sharing that I read this book a while ago, probably while I was writing that book, and it was so impactful. And I said to a couple of folks I was reading with, I see them in the room. I had the queen in the room. I was reading with Persians and a couple of others, and I said, this book, oh my goodness, we're gonna have to come back, we're gonna have to dissect. So this was really a great opportunity to be able to do that, because who has time to do that? I mean, really, no, I mean, this is not my life. That's not how my time is set up. So, grateful for this opportunity to share with you The Island Queen by Vanessa Riley. I am a professor, but don't worry. Not be deaf by PowerPoint today. I'm just going to use the PowerPoint to keep me on track so that I don't go beyond my allotted moments here. I want to share a little bit about the author, and then the plot summary. Don't want to ruin it for the folks who haven't read it yet. A few key themes and impacts from my perspective, and then I really want to save the bulk of the time today for any questions or discussion that you all might want to engage in with me. Okay, so this is a delicious illustration here, published in 2021. It's 557 pages, not much to make your way through. So, Vanessa Riley. Now, I am just enamored with this book, this Island Queen book, but I have to say that I'm becoming a bit of a fangirl where Vanessa Riley is concerned, for a number of reasons. So she is out of Georgia. She's a wife, a mother, a baker. I don't bake, but I admire people who do. And if anyone here wants to bake for me, feel free to do so. A Southern belle, but also an island girl, Trinidad and Tobago. And she is really, her mission now is to uncover and to inspire and empower. Okay, so Vanessa Riley comes to this work with a doctorate in mechanical engineering and management from Stanford. Okay, this is this is what she's doing, and she's done lots of research work in the line that you would expect, right, for the NASA and GM and Hewlett Packard and several other startups. And then she says, research. I'll tell you what I can do with that as well. I'm going to go research some things for some romance novels. I love that. Just kind of remixing the skills that you develop in the academy and in the business world and using them to bring beauty, joy, and abundance to a whole other aspect, right? And so this is why I'm finding myself to be a bit of a fangirl for Vanessa Riley. She's written about 24 of these types of books, and you see she's got one in her hand, Sister, Mother, Warrior. She recently released Queen of Exiles, but Island Queen is about Dorothy Karen Thomas. And she brings us, Vanessa Riley, brings us the Island Queen by way of Jane Austen's Sanditon. That's a bit of a circuitous route there, but stick with me. So this is how she comes to the Island Queen. She's reading in Sanditon about this mulatto woman who was the wealthiest character in the book. And she's highly sought after, and she's got suitors from all across the place. And Vanessa says to herself, now either Jane Austen is just awesome, and she's created this character after my own heart, or there may be a part of these stories that I've been missing. There may have been a lot of these types of characters, African descended characters who lived different lives than I've been used to hearing. This is how she's, sort of making the line of reasoning for herself. And she says, I bet you I can use some of these research skills of mine to figure out either I just really love Jane Austen because she's created this character out of thin air, or I really love Jane Austen because she's brought this character to the forefront for me. And it turns out to be the latter. And I love this. I gotta come out here at the risk of falling over my boots because my toes aren't working anymore. I please don't like to be cold. But I love how she says, as a person of color, a Black woman, a Georgian and Regency history novelist, and a girl of Trinidad and Tobago. She says, I felt found discovering Mrs. Lamb. This was the character that Jane Austen, but she felt found when she discovered this character. Such a delightful turn of phrase there. And she embarks on what is now her second chapter, right? Her next, and developing these beautiful stories and bringing them to the forefront. And she brings us the Island Queen. The Island Queen in this book is Dorothy Karen Thomas, probably related to me. Okay? I'm not going to say no relation. I don't have the evidence to suggest she isn't related to me. And so until I uncover that, and I'm not searching for it, I'm going to suggest that maybe, perhaps, she is my great something going on. This is an epic, it's a sweeping tale of her life, okay, from 1756 to 1846, the life, the adventures of Dorothy Dolly Karen Thomas is what the Island Queen is about. And because it is about this sweeping epic of her life during this time period, it is also about so much of the African diaspora. It is about colonialism from a different perspective. It is about all of these wonderful islands you see in the West Indies. And I mean, it should come as no surprise to you, just hearing this summary, why the book had so much impact on me. Because I don't want to say Helena Island, I'm fashioning myself as a bit of an island queen, but it's beyond that. I grew up surrounded by, as it turns out, women just like Dorothy Karen Thomas, who started from some of the most hard-scrabble beginnings, and who decided for one reason or another that that was not going to be their story, that they were going to somehow craft and pull and stitch together an experience that was more worthy of themselves. I am surrounded by great-grandmothers and grandmothers and aunts and sisters and sisters from other mothers and sisters. And in particular, my Aunt Dot, Dorothy. I'm not making it up. Dorothy Thomas Wheat, born in 1923, and the sun set on her life on this side of the world on September 26, 2023. So 100 years we had the delightful honor, the blessing of engaging with Dorothy Thomas Wheat, and I swear she has so much in common with Dorothy Karen Thomas. I'm not gonna spoil it again for the folks who haven't read, and I'm gonna check my time too. You haven't realized I can go on. So this is why I have the slides, because I can go on. We're not going to do that. Couple of key characters. So this is, we're going to do a plot summary by breaking down just a little bit of the key characters. We have, of course, Dolly, Dorothy, Kieran Thomas, the island queen, mother of 10 children. So she beat my mom by 1. Okay? And here on the, I'm used to having my computer right here so I can say, here on the side are all of her wonderful children, and her children were her legacy. So as we go through, as you read through the book, you see how essential it was for her, in her mind, what she was building, everything that she was doing was for her children and her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren, her nieces and her great-nieces, and all of the legacy to come behind her. And this is the, I am the lived example of a Dorothy who said, I am going to do this because there will come a time where there's going to be a kid who's going to need something. And I met Dot Wheat when she was 70. I met her when she was 70, and she was just the most remarkable person in high heels and, this tweed suit and flaming red hair and lipstick, and she's going somewhere every day. And she is living just the most glamorous, ostentatious life that she could craft out for herself. And she says, this is what you're going to do. You're going to be a businesswoman. You're going to go get every degree that you can. You're going to go do everything that I could not do because of the circumstances of society that said I couldn't do these things. I have this expectation for you. And this is what Dolly does throughout her entire lived experience. Her mother, Betty, her mom, who we'll talk about that. Kitty, her sister, Nicholas, Kieran, her half-brother, we'll talk about that in a minute. And all the Queen's men. Now, Daryl, cover your ears. Cover your ears, dear. All the Queen's men. This is one of the reasons why a couple more of the island queens. we are in love with this book. And Dolly says, listen, this is the life I'm living, okay? At this moment, I'm with John Sells, a wealthy planter hiding a secret. And maybe I'll be keeping time with someone else, in a decade or so. We'll see. And then in comes Captain Joseph Thomas, a restless shipping merchant. And then, not to be outdone, who is an island queen if she does not, in her little black book, have a king? And so, Prince William is the royal, that's a bad all the same guy at different times in his life. And again, this is based on a true story. So this is not made up. Okay, none of that is made up. Dorothy, I'm sorry, because I'm going in between Dorothy and Dorothy Dolly. They both did live a life of sort of unapologetic exuberance. And that comes through in a living color. So why are we being up with this? What's the deal here? Beyond what you can tell from the plot summary, there are some themes that come across, at least to me, in this book that I think make it worth several reads. And one of the themes is around this matter of mental health and how mental health matters. Vanessa Riley, woman after my own heart, does not mince words. She does not she takes her time to go through it, and it's very difficult, right? For those of you who are going to read it, I will let you know it's a very difficult read, the first few chapters to get through. And I suppose it should be, given what so many of these island queens have had to, the chapters they've had to go through to get through to the point of the joy, the beauty, and the abundance. And so she does not, she doesn't, gloss over this issue of rape and incest and how enslaved African women and their bodies were not their own, and kind of what that impact had on them and their families. She takes her time going through that. I gotta read this is from the author's notes. So Riley's a researcher, and so she goes through great pains to sort of walk you through her research process, where she came to these characters inside of it, which she gives a little bit of her personalities too. She says, these narratives often describe rape of the enslaved by slave masters in terms of consent, even in cases of incest. You'll never imagine how many scientific papers and history books I've tossed against the wall as the author chose to call these violent unions relationships. Now, I'm not a fan of book burning, but nothing makes me long for the scent of kerosene and carbon more than reading paragraphs of how the wanton enslaved woman enticed her master to satisfy dark cravings of her over-sexualized body, a body that is often treated as not experiencing pain like others. And this is why we love Vanessa. She does this kind of straight with no chaser with her, but trust by research, readily available, independently verifiable research. You just gotta love that marriage. So she says, in the Island Queen, she tackles that issue. So, Nicholas, Carolyn, Thomas, I'm gonna give away a little bit just so we can carry this thread through, is her half-brother and the father of her child, one of her children. And Riley picks that apart in the book, and she doesn't just touch on it one time. She carries it through to the child. Because we gotta kind of have some of these conversations, right? These difficult conversations, like not only what was the impact on the woman, but then she kept the child, and what's the impact on the child in that relationship there? She explores all of those things with with beautiful language and sort of a commitment to empowering, to sort of putting this story of this living woman in present day context, but she is also sticking to the historical context as well. It is a balancing act that she's mastered, I believe. She describes postpartum depression in ways that I had not ever seen engage in the region, certainly not in the Regency series, but not, I mean, beyond that, it's often, oh, this is what it was, but she talks about it from the perspective of, oh, these were ongoing blues, and how does one think about having other children or maintaining relationships or building a business when they are feeling the baby blues. And she talks about that throughout, because the Island Queen has 10 children. And every time she experiences this issue, and so do some of her other children. So it's really a valuable conversation starter there. She offers a really complete, a more complete examination of the toll of enslaved and free Black women in this historical context, and what it cost them, what kinds of decisions they had to make, and at what point to sort of show up in the world in any kind of way, but to say nothing of showing up in the world as a business person or a landowner or someone trying to build a legacy in spite of all of these sort of guardrails. It's just a really deep exploration of intersectionality. And for those of you who are not, engaged in that kind of research or thinking, it's just where various, ways of being oppressed meet each other, where, womanhood and Africanness intersect, and how those things impact one's forward progress, and how someone can decide how they need to employ those things in a different way so that they don't necessarily impact one's forward progress. I hear someone saying, move forward. I will. Another key theme or impact from this book for me, paper and work. There's all kinds of puns there. I am a public policy and administrative specialist. My trade is paperwork. Okay, I am from the government. I'm here to help policies, get your policy to sit in the chair if you want to. Paperwork. I love how Riley positions our island queen as someone who is very serious about managing her paperwork and keeping the affairs of her family and her business in tip-top order. I am a member of the Gullah Geechee community, and for any of you who have any kind of understanding about our community, you know that things like heirs property and land laws are serious issues confronting us on a regular basis. And this, for those of us who are activists, we're often out there, get your will, get your trust set up, get your paperwork in order. It's so essential to do these things because the next generation is coming. They're going to need a head start, and it's very easy for all of this work to just evaporate if your paperwork isn't in order. Dog knew that. Norman Kierman Thomas understood the assignment. Okay, and it took her 16 years, but she purchased her freedom. She earned paper, turned that paper into freedom papers, and then turned those papers into more papers for the next generation. This is what she did over, despite of, in spite of, and possibly because of what she went through. She didn't want that for her grandchildren, for her children, her grandchildren, her nieces in particular. She wanted to create a different kind of experience and possibility for them. And I love how Rowley says, and this is Rowley on the Island Queen, the embroidered linen is right there next to my paper. I'll never leave the house without them, but I hope one day I might not dread being without them. Because she's talking, of course, about her papers. She doesn't go anywhere without her freedom papers. She purchased her freedom, she purchased her sister's freedom, her children, her mother's, and then she built businesses to make sure she could keep that freedom. She did all kinds of things. All kinds of things. And this is a mixed audience, probably some Southern Baptists in this, rabbi. She did all kinds of things to make things happen. She was a huckster, mercantile. She cleaned houses, and then, but she didn't just do that. She said, okay, someone else is going to be cleaning houses too. Someone else is going to need their houses cleaned. What I'm going to do, I'm going to train those ladies to clean the best houses, and they're going to work for me. And I'll be the broker. So she's running a capital temp agency in Montserrat. She turned those proceeds into it, so she had an eye and an ear for what people were going to want and how they were going to want it. And she knew she could deliver it, and that's what she did. She built and managed hotels, and she also wasn't enslaved herself. I love that Rowley does not do broad brush, that she does not mince words, and she is not afraid to tackle difficult, uncomfortable, thorny, complicated concepts. And she does that in this book, and she does that throughout a couple of others as well. Really sort of thinking about what does it mean for this African descended woman, this Black woman, to be purchasing other African people to work on her building, at her hotels or on her plantations or what have you. What was that? So, you can read about it in the book. She was not afraid to partner with other business women. And she did it in a way that allowed them to come and bring their full selves to the table as business owners and as women. They did not have to choose on what parts of themselves to bring. She created sort of this collaborative with her partners that allowed them to be their full selves. And then together, they worked to address some pretty thorny issues like taxation and representation and making sure that they were able to survive all of these different political changes. Remember, they did not have a lot of political power writ large, so they had to craft whatever they could, whatever kind of power and representation that they could outside of the standard structure. And that's what they did. And so this kind of keeping the papers and making it work really stood out to me. Love that Dolly was Black, beautiful, and powerful, and this is how Vanessa Riley scripts her. This is how she brings her to our attention with this, with a clear focus on Black beauty. So, and this is, again, this is a Regency era novel. We've got all of these, these ideas about single standards of beauty that have been sort of foisted upon a lot of us through various and sundry societal lenses. And Vanessa Riley says, here is the island queen to sort of debunk a lot of those myths for you. Contrary to popular notions about this idea of, light complexion-based beauty standards. And, a lot of times when we read novels from this period of time, if there is a Black woman being presented as the beauty standard, she is usually, even mulatto, she is usually very light complected. That's usually how she's illustrated, depicted, etc. And we don't have the time to pick apart colorism and etc. We don't have that kind of time today. But what we will say is, Riley did the research and comes up with some illustrations. This is actually from the newspaper that she found in her research, talks about how not only was Dorothy Curing Thomas this beauty, this renowned beauty, but she was this dark-skinned beauty. And she did not shy away from using her beauty to get her in the door. I love that part too, because I'm not sorry. You better use what your mama gave you. And this is what she did. She used her beauty to gain access, and then she used her brains to maintain and leverage that access. It was as though she was saying, listen, I know what I'm up against. I understand what the standards are, but I also know what I'm trying to create. So I'm not going to pretend that this doesn't exist right here, but I'm also not going to pretend that I can't create this that I want to exist. Let's put the two together. Let's see if I can come up with. She was very well connected across genders, across races, across social classes. You find her in the Island Queen in brothels, and you find her with the king's, all the king's horses and all the king's men kind of situation, and everything in between. And what I really found so impactful about her is how she found a way to show up as herself in each encounter. And she kept showing up as herself until eventually her reputation preceded her. And so folks, when they saw her name on the agenda, they knew what she was bringing. And then there were times when her reputation wasn't enough, so she had to craft something else on the spot. Just on the spot. And she says, listen, I need to, there's a really, it's a very tense moment in the book where she's about to lose everything, and the businesswoman collective is about to lose everything, and she needs to get an audience with the third in command in Britain. She needs to get an audience, and she does not have a title. She's the Island Queen, but she doesn't have a title. And she says, well, Dambo, she's talking to her niece, it's a pet name for her niece. She says, I need to dress like a queen. And go down to Whitehall and see if the Secretary of the Colonies wants to deal with royalty from the territories. And that is what she does. Because one of the Queen's men has sent her a hat. It's not just any hat. It's not just any hat. It is a hat fit for a queen. And she opens that box and she says, this is what I'll do. And so this is like a bit of a spoiler alert closure here. But she hires the biggest chariot she can find. And she gets a seamstress to make her this dress that's got a train from here to there. She hires all of these footmen, and she tells, as she's entering, she's stepping off her, and the footman comes up and she says, introduce me as Dorothy Kirwan Thomas, and make sure you pronounce all the S's. And he does, because she slips him coins. And so she's got this entourage behind her. They're carrying this train of a dress. When she stepped out of this, she seems like she's royalty from somewhere. And so the Secretary of the Colony says, of course I have time to meet with royalty from Jamaica. And in that she has created herself as royalty, and she is able to, in that setting, save the businesses and the business interests for all of these women she represents. They sent her down there on a mission, and she thought she was going to fail. What she had wasn't enough, and so she just created something more. You just make what you got. I think I'm finishing up here. Yeah, so this is a great one to enjoy. Living and loving on purpose. I don't think there was an apology in the woman's bones. This is it. This is the life I have crafted, and this is how I am going to live it. Now that's Dr. Reed. That's Dr. Reed Thomas all day and twice on Sunday. Can't spell apology. I don't have one for you. This is what it is. That's might as well. If you don't like it, add it to the list of things you don't like. Well, she insisted on living as freely as she could live. Even when she did not have papers, she insisted on living as freely as she could live. In spite of her beginnings, in spite of the circumstances surrounding her, she chose to love. In spite of going through the trauma that she went through, she still chose to love. And then she chose to love again. And then she chose to love again. She, in spite of heartbreak and, so this breaking conventions, right? So she's breaking conventions. And then as I'm reading through the book, I'm thinking, well, was she breaking conventions, or was she representing conventions that were broken already and she was just living how she was supposed to live? And these things are just, she lived long enough and she worked hard enough to learn how to and to be able to truly enjoy life. She truly enjoyed. My brother said she didn't need any meat on the bones of life. He said, my job was not to leave any meat on the bones of life. She dressed well, she ate well, she drank the finest champagne. She's funny as all get out, because she told the people she was giving them her finest champagne, and then she laughed when they thought it was great champagne. Her good stuff was in the back. But these folks that didn't know anything about champagne, so she gave them her bottom drawer champagne. A character. She traveled abroad. She took her children with her. She sent her grandchildren and her nieces and her grandnieces and her great-grandnieces to the finest institutions, which she underwrote as a patron, because that's what she intended to do. She built a legacy for her family. She got what I believe is the best revenge. The best revenge is a life well lived.